Welcome back to the Parent Doctor podcast. I'm Dr. Marissa Caudill, and I'm so thrilled to have you with me today as we dive into one of the most powerful phases of parenting, the golden years between the ages of 5 and 12. This stage is such a unique time. Our kids are still deeply connected to us, and it's this time that we can build a solid, flexible foundation that will carry them through adolescence and beyond. Today, we're exploring how we as parents can be intentional about fostering resilience, confidence, and a strong family identity. Parenting these ages is a gift, but it's also a responsibility, especially with the influence of social media, tech, and everything modern life throws at our kids. The tools I'm sharing in this episode come from my work as a psychiatrist, as well as my experiences as a mom. I'm right there with you. My daughter is 8 and my son just turned 12, so I'm living this journey of the golden years too. If you find this episode helpful, please share it with friends who have kids in the age range 5 to 12. And if you're interested in working more closely with me, I have openings in my upcoming EPIC program. That stands for Empowered Parent Inner Circle. This is a group coaching program with individualized support. If you're interested in getting on the waitlist or learning more, head over to www.theparentdoctor.com/EPIC waitlist. Let's build that connection with our kids and set them up for a strong, confident future. Let's dive in. I'm really passionate about these ages, 5 to 12 in particular, because yes, they are the golden years, and I'm there with you guys. My daughter is about to turn 8, my son is 12, so we're about to enter the next phase, which is going to be interesting. But these years, 5 to 12, are a breather. It's a bit of a reprieve, right? The first year, as we all know and remember, is just survival mode because you're not sleeping. You're just trying to get through that first year or two. And you spend so much time with your infant. But even though it's a lot of face-to-face time, it's not great bonding time always because they're not yet speaking and you don't yet know who they are. And so these years between 5 and 12 are really the most fertile years for us to develop a strong connection with our kids, to give them that strong sense of family identity from which they can then grow into their own individual identity once they hit adolescence, knowing that we have their back and that we're their safety net. And ideally to create a really strong but flexible relationship. I think of it like spider web, like a real strong tensile strength is the strength that I want the relationship that I have with my children to have when they're adults. But I want it to be really dynamic and flexible so that whatever they want to do, wherever they want to go, I want them to go for it. But I want them to know that they will remain forever tethered to me in some way, not in a like, I'm holding you back kind of way, but in a I'm here for you kind of way. And I'm sure that most of you feel the same way, if not all of you. So that's why I wanted to talk today. I've been going back and forth whether to just keep this conversational or to use some slides that I made. I think I will go to the slides in a minute. But I wanted to start by putting out this statistic, which is shocking but true. And that is that 70% of our face-to-face time with our children is done by their 12th birthday, which is really sad for me because my son, as I said, just turned 12. And I have to tell you, I saw this somewhere posted on social media and instantly my gut was like, that's not true. That's baloney. And I went, because I'm a total nerd, and I sat down and made a spreadsheet. And I thought about like all the time I spent with my kid when I was staying home with them, the first few weeks, the first few months, all those hours late at night where you're awake with them and your husband or spouse might be sleeping. All of that counts, right? So even counting all of that, and even then, imagining a future where we're like, everybody loves Raymond and I'm the mom living next door and I'm seeing him like regularly every week, which may not be our future, right? That's not what most American families have, although some are lucky enough to have that. Even then, for me, it was like 60-something% of all the face-to-face time I estimate I'll have with him in our life is done by their 12th birthday. So it's true. Now, that doesn't mean that the other time that we have with our kids is not going to be valuable. Just like the time I have with my son now at age 12 may be less than the time I had with him in his first year of life, but I think it's more impactful because he can contribute to the conversations and we have a two-way dynamic conversation now rather than me just doing stuff for him. So I don't mean to make this sound really depressing. It's just important to realize that the time to sow the seeds for a great future relationship with our children is really now. It's when they're between ages 5 and 12. And in my work as the parent doctor, this is really what I'm most passionate about. So as I said, I am a child psychiatrist. I've been in practice for 17 years. I've treated thousands of families. And as a child psychiatrist, what that means is mom or dad or both bring their child into me because there's some problem that's greater than what they can handle. And no parent dreams of the day that they bring their kid to see a child psychiatrist, right? This is a stressful event. And in hearing the stories of thousands of families, these are not the stories that these families put on Instagram, right? These are not the highlight reels. These are the difficult stories, the stories about things that went wrong, abuse, failures, neglect, ways that parents couldn't be there for their kids, whatever it is. And then my role is to try to help them repair that. And I do my best in my clinical role. But what I often see is that by the time people come to me with their child, they're often older. Most of the kids I saw were, other than the young kids that I would see for like ADHD, most kids were preteens or teens solidly. And the problematic patterns between parents and kids by then had been in place for years and were relatively inflexible and harder to treat. And especially for me in my role as a clinician within a big healthcare system where I had 30-minute appointments for follow-ups, there wasn't enough time for me to effectively work with these parents. And the good news is that we as parents absolutely hold the keys to improving our kids' mental health and their overall well-being in adolescence and in adulthood. We are the most important people in our kids' lives. So even though, especially as your kid hits adolescence, you're not going to feel that way, because the normal stage of adolescence is to distance oneself from one's parents and make the parents feel like they're less important. In fact, we remain just as important. And there's lots of research showing that strong relationships with parents and close relationships, parents remaining involved in their adolescent's life, predicts strong outcomes in their children, reduced risks of depression, anxiety, substance use, suicidality, better social outcomes, better academic outcomes, all that good stuff. I really want to applaud those of you who are here and watching this replay, because you're doing the things that you can do to make sure that you are making the relationship with your child the best it can be during these really fertile years. And I think of it also as kind of like, it's almost like retirement. You know how we work and work and work, right? And we save money thinking that at some point we're going to stop working and we're going to draw down that balance. With our kids, this is also the work and work and work time, 5 to 12. This is where we want to really be building the balance in our joint emotional bank account with our child, so that when they hit adolescence and they start to make big withdrawals, because they will, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but the neurobiology of adolescence is such that they're going to be making big withdrawals. They're not going to be able to help it. Their brain is under massive reconstruction in adolescence, and they're going to be doing things that disturb our solid foundation of our relationship. But if we know that and we anticipate that and we build up the bank account balance, we'll be okay, because we won't end up overdrawn, because throughout those years, we'll be able to keep it functioning and we'll prevent overdraft fees. But let me tell you a little bit more about my role as the parent doctor. So as I said, I practiced in various settings. I practiced in the university setting, which was really a tertiary care center. So where young people who had mental health problems that really couldn't be handled in most community settings would end up coming to UCLA, where I trained. So I saw a lot of extreme cases there. And then after graduation, I worked in community mental health. And that basically means caring for kids and families of lower socioeconomic status who have Medicaid, or here in California, it's called Medi-Cal, and in private practice. And then after about 5-6 years in private practice, I decided, after having 2 kids, I wanted to have a job that was more defined. And I went to work for Kaiser Permanente, which is a large managed care organization here in Southern California. They're present in other states as well. And there I was very busy, and I worked there for 4 years and 4 months. And I left that position in May of 2022, because even though what I was doing was really important, even though what I was doing was really needed, I really strongly did not feel that in my role as a psychiatrist prescribing medications for mental health disorders, I was providing the information and the care that families really needed. And so I started the Parent Doctor early 2023, which was really for me a big step out of my comfort zone. I'm not someone who's very extroverted and comfortable. I never had an Instagram account until then. And now I'm really driven by the mission of wanting to help parents. You may have seen the Surgeon General just in September put out a report called Parents Under Pressure. But I know we all know parents are under pressure. And this includes both parents who are in higher socioeconomic status, like doing well financially, have good jobs, successful. We're under pressure because our kids in these high pressure settings are high risk for developing depression, anxiety, and suicidality. And then parents in lower socioeconomic status are under pressure because they are squeezed economically and worried about their kids' prospects in what seems to be an ever increasingly competitive world. All of us have so many factors at play, and more since we had kids older, many of us were squeezed also by the fact that we are in the sandwich generation, caring for both young children and our aging parents. So, as the parent doctor, my mission is to really cut through all the noise because now, again, with social media and with so many parent coaches out there, there's a lot of people who are giving us a lot of advice, some of which is good, but some of which is really not based on evidence. And I want to cut through to help people see what's really truly based on evidence. And most importantly, how do you take the stuff that you learn from things you hear about, podcasts, books that you read, whatever it is? How do you take that and implement it in your day to day life? That's really what's so important. That's what I do. And I do this through education. I have a free monthly book club. If any of you aren't yet in there, I'm going to give you the link so you can sign up. And I do this through office hours that I present every month, which is a low-cost way to get access to me in a small group setting and pick my brain. Again, it's not clinical care. I'm not doing any diagnosing or treating in those sessions, but I am talking about different issues like this. And I also work very closely with a few people. One of them is here, Kate Mangona, in my Empowered Parent Inner Circle group. And this is basically a short-term inner circle parenting mastermind where we work together and go through in a structured way things that are going to help you in your particular situation with your children. Again, you all as parents of 5 to 12-year-olds are absolutely the type of people that I love to work with because I know the time that you spend and invest in yourselves as parents is going to reap the greatest rewards, both for you in your relationship with your children, but most importantly, for them in the person that they become as a result of you having invested this time in understanding yourself and how you need to be for them. So let's dive right in. Did that already? Okay. Sorry, this has a curse word warning, but it's funny. So have you ever felt like parenting is a bit of a roller coaster? I feel like this happens to me every day. And even as a so-called expert, it still gets my goat that I can be so like a marionette on strings especially by my youngest daughter. When she tells me like, I love you, mommy, and I feel like I've hit a home run with something I've done for her or shown her, oh my God, my heart is like exploding. It feels so good. And then when she is unhappy and slamming her door in my face, it feels so bad. So this is really just a laugh for all of us. Let's see if it will work. Can you hear it?
Not sure, so you know, what's inside fun? Well, we all know we like granny.
All right. So I liked all the actors in that one too. Their faces are funny. But we do that, right? We go through these huge highs and huge lows. So one of the pillars that I teach the people who work with me and that I emphasize in the book club and in my newsletters is emotion regulation. One of the things that parents often wanted for their children when they brought their kids to see me as a child psychiatrist is, please give my kids some skills. Please help them regulate their emotions and cope a little bit better. Here's the thing. We cannot expect that our kids are going to be good at emotion regulation or coping until we ourselves really master emotion regulation and coping. This is an example, right? I'm working on it. I've been working on it for years. But this is why the actual, how do you practice it is so important, because otherwise it's very easy to just feel like you're on this roller coaster and to think when you're having a good day, okay, I'm on the right track. And then boom, things are going to turn around and you're wondering, how did I get here? With a little effort, with someone like me to help you put things in perspective and understand why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, you're going to be a better equipped parent to help your child understand their own emotional state better. And that's a really key phase and accomplishment that needs to happen in these 5 to 12 age range. Again, if any of you are not yet on the book club, go to theparentdoctor.com/book club to sign up for that. And please also check out my podcast. You can listen to it on Audible, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Those are the free resources. Let's think first about, with our kids in this 5 to 12 age range, what is the end goal? When your child hits adolescence, when they're 13, what are the things that you want them to have? What are the skills you want them to have? What are the character traits you want them to have? What are the abilities in terms of their executive functioning? And that's not just planning and execution. That's also all of the things that make us complex human beings, like the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, the ability to have empathy for another person. All of those are goals that I have for my kids. And I recognize that I have 7 years to get them ready, but it's not just going to happen. Just if your goal is to get in shape, it's not just going to happen that you can read books about getting in shape or watch people doing exercise videos and you're going to get in shape. You have to do the work. And similarly with our kids, we have to do the work of helping them get to what those end goals are. So when I think about where do I want my kids to be ultimately, my ultimate goal, I wrote this down, is I want independent kids with confidence in their ability to reach their goals. I want them to feel like they can have a positive impact on the world, and I want them to enjoy close, nurturing relationships. So that's my ultimate goal for what skills and abilities I want my kids to have when they're 18. And I encourage you to think about that for yourself too and write it down. Have it written down so that you can keep this in mind. Put it on a little piece of paper in your wallet or put it on a note on your phone. And then in those hard moments when the roller coaster is crashing, you can take a breath and say, okay, what is my ultimate goal here? And if your child is just doing something that's annoying that they tend to do, like not cleaning up their room or not eating their vegetables, you can remind yourself that in the grand scheme of things, on your path to this ultimate goal, maybe that's not so important. And then before age 12, my goal is that we will have a big balance in our joint emotional bank account because, as I said, we know when they hit adolescence, they're going to start making big withdrawals in that bank account. And so I need to right now build a big balance. What does that mean? It means I need to be noticing and praising my kids for the good things that they do. These are category 1 behaviors. So there's just 3 categories of behaviors for our kids. Category 1 is the things they do that we like and we want to see more of. Those are the things that we really want to go out of our way to notice and praise. When they're young, when they're 5 or 6, this can be big praise. You did it. Yay, I'm so proud of you. As they get closer to 10, 11, 12, that tweeny stage, it really needs to be more subtle, off the cuff. Hey, good job. I noticed this. Thank you. Here's a trick. One of the best ways to deliver praise to your kids is to have them overhear you when they don't think that you know that they can overhear you, praising them to someone else. So when you're talking to your partner, when you're talking to a sibling, when you're talking to a friend from school on the phone, or maybe you leave your phone out and they see a text, but praise something that they did. They'd be like, you'll never guess what he or she did today. It was so nice. And make it a little thing, not just the academic outcomes, the good grades, the wins on the sports team, whatever it is. Those are okay to praise too. But we also want to praise kindness, generosity, patience, perseverance, like those kinds of character traits that we want to see in our kids. We have to be explicit about praising those and giving examples that we notice of the times that they do that. All right, this is what this is about, right? What qualities, what character qualities do we want to see? Again, that's something you could write down in a note on your phone to keep track of that for yourself. Setting clear goals. What are your goals for the next 6 months, for the next 12 months, before they hit 12, before they hit 18? Because it's important to think about that as well. The book that we're reading for this month's book club is called Thrivers. And the last 3 books have been on a similar theme. There was How to Raise an Adult by Julie Lipcott-Hames. She's a former dean at Stanford. Last month was Never Enough by Jennifer Brahini-Wallace. And this month is Thrivers by Michelle Borba. And they're all about this trend, which is that we've been, in an effort to protect our kids, coddling them a little too much a lot of the time. And one of the examples in Thrivers was this father saying he was at the freshman college admission weekend and actually saw a mother lean over and cut her son's meat. So this is the goal, right? It's like we have to keep this in mind. Like my goal is not to have my child need me to feed them when they're at college, right? I'm sure that that's your goal as flowers. And it sounds silly, but it's easy at the same time to get into this slippery slope and habit with our kids of doing things for them. I don't cut my kids' meat because we're vegetarians, but I do their laundry. I pack their lunches. I still do things for them that they could be doing for themselves. And so I better wake up and start thinking about how do I want to get them to be more independent? And that's not something that you can do overnight. And this is a problematic pattern that I've seen a lot in teenagers, which is the parents keep doing the thing, thinking falsely that their child, once they reach a certain age, is going to suddenly magically going to be able to do it. Like the child is, something will wake up in them and they'll be like, hey, mom, I got this. I'm going to do this from now on. That rarely happens. The truth is we need to make it clear to our kids, we know that they can do this thing. We believe that they can do it and we know that they have to learn to do it. And so we firmly and lovingly start pushing them towards the steps of independently being able to do whatever that is, from cutting their own meat to doing their own laundry to planning their homework, all of that stuff. Okay. So there are 4 styles of parenting. This is a very simple fact, and one of the key things I want y'all to take away from today. We know this. Again, this is something you're going to get a lot of stuff on social media saying different things, different people giving their examples of what a great parent they are or how they do things with their kids. The reality is we have over 50 years of data going back to a psychologist by the name of Diana Baumrind, who is from Stanford, and now supported by tens of thousands of parent and child interactions that have been observed and reported. We know that every time we interact with our kids, if you imagine like a graph, kind of like a bullseye, right? On the, what is it? On the x-axis, you have permissive on one side and firm on the other. And on the other side, you have hostile on the low y-axis and loving on the high y-axis. Every time you interact with your kids, it's like throwing a dart at this board. Sometimes you're in the permissive and loving zone, right? Sometimes you're in the firm and loving zone. Sometimes you're in the firm and hostile zone. And sometimes you're in the permissive and hostile zone. And all of us are in all of these places, pretty much. There's very few people who are only permissive and loving or only firm and loving. I myself am no exception. There's times when I'm permissive and hostile. There's times when I'm firm and hostile. But the goal has to be that we all move towards being firm and loving, because without a doubt, there's tons of evidence that this approach to parenting, also known as authoritative parenting, Dr. Becky calls this sturdy and warm, but it's basically firm and loving. We set clear limits, we let our kids know why we're setting those limits, and we enforce the limits with love. And this leads to the best outcomes in our kids. It leads to the best academic outcomes, social outcomes, emotional outcomes, and less risk of drug use and less risk of depression, anxiety, substance use, all of those things. I think in 2024, a lot of parents think that the best parenting or second best parenting is permissive and loving. We've seen a lot of stuff about gentle parenting, right? We want to make up for the harsh words of maybe our parents and grandparents, the old school style of parenting. We want to be better. We want to be more emotionally connected to our kids. The problem is many people who try to do gentle parenting struggle to be firm enough. So again, thinking about that x-axis, they fell too far on the low side of the x-axis and they are permissive rather than being firm. And in fact, parents who are permissive fall behind in terms of the kids' outcomes, firm and loving, which is best, but also behind firm and hostile, which surprises many people. Firm and hostile would be like, remember that book, Amy Chua wrote it, called Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mom? About like, you got to let your kids know, you got to make them do this. It doesn't matter if they want to do it. If they want to be great, this is what they got to do. I think it's also very classically how my grandparents raised my parents, which is do it because I said so. I'm the parent, a very authoritarian approach. That style of parenting may not feel very good if you're a gentle, loving parent who wants their kids to be happy and doesn't want to ever hurt them. But in terms of the outcomes of the children, that style of parenting does better. And I see this played out all the time on social media. It actually follows a lot of the blue and red division politically of our country right now. Some of the things that I post get a lot of people angry at me saying something that I'm saying is firm and loving. They think it's not good enough, that I should be more hostile, that hostile is really tough love. That's what real love is. But that's not true. The real data shows that firm and loving is best. Firm and hostile is second best, but permissive and loving is third. So if you find yourself falling more often on the permissive side of things, please take this as your wake-up call to be motivated to make yourself move towards being more firm, and I can support you in doing that. I actually encourage you all. I made a nice little quiz. It's fun to take. It takes just a few minutes. Go to theparentdoctor.com/quiz, and you can find out what style of parenting is dominant in you right now and what you need to work on to get closer to this firm and loving. I didn't talk much about permissive and hostile because if you're here listening to this, I guarantee that you're not spending much time in there. We all have bad days, sure. I also could be like, fine, whatever. But for the most part, I don't think any of you are in the firm and hostile category. This would be telling your kids, fine, do whatever you want, but then also being mad at them if they make a bad choice or for even wanting to do something that's different than what you would want them to do. All right. Also very important for this 5 to 12 age range is social development. And this is where, again, our kids' childhoods are very different than our childhood was. Many of our kids' interactions, even from a young age, may be online. through devices, through video games. And therefore, we have to take a much greater thoughtful approach, an intentional approach with our kids to make sure that they're getting plenty of one-to-one time or one-to-many time, face-to-face with their friends. I encourage you all the next time you go out and about to notice young people, teens and 20s, how they interact with each other. My husband and I have been taking note of this lately, like when we go out on a date to a restaurant, and it's a little sad and shocking because often the phone is like this third person at the table with them, and they're going back and forth sharing things from social media, taking pictures of themselves with the food, whatever. So the phone is ever present. And I'm not even going to talk about that today because that's tomorrow's topic. And for your children between 5 and 12, just know no phone, no phone. Absolutely no phone between 5 and 12. Even though 60 something percent of kids have smartphones by age 12 in the US, that's a huge mistake. No question, no child should have a smartphone before the age of 12. We can talk tomorrow, and we will talk more tomorrow about the other alternatives. If you have a child coming and going and you need to stay in touch with them, that's fine. You can make that happen, but it should never be a smartphone. So we need to think about organizing play dates, whether that's sports and structured time, whether that's just hangout time, being outdoors. There's so much data that being outside in nature is therapeutic and good for one's mental health. And as parents with kids in this age range where they will do what we take them to do, going out for hikes, going out for walks, flying kites, gardening, whatever it is all for their betterment now and in the future. And then we want to make sure, and this is really important too, and a big part of what I do as the parent doctor is not just about the kids, it's about us. We need to be leading by example and making sure that we are fostering and nurturing our own friendships. And if the kid gets to come along, if you have friends who have who have children the same age as your kids, great, bonus. But even if you don't, making sure that your kids see you valuing friendship is very important so that they know that that's an important part of life and they understand what they will need to do to keep it alive when they become adults. To understand it takes work and it takes adaptability and it takes flexibility and it takes forgiveness sometimes and effort, but it's worth it. Oh, here. And then, so I can speak to this a little bit because both of my kids are on the shyer side of things. When it comes to social interactions, we also can be very intentional about thinking about where is our child now compared to where our ultimate goal is when they're 12. Maybe by 12, we want our kid to be able to go into a restaurant. I don't know. Lots of restaurants now you order at the counter and you take your food to your seat, right? I want my kid to be able to go in there independently, order their food, be polite, make eye contact, sit down, get the food. I want them to be able to do that by the time they're 12. My son's 12. He can't quite do that yet, but I finally realized, I have been neglecting this, partly because of the pandemic, because we were stuck inside for a few years. But now when we go out and we get an ice cream or we do anything, order a smoothie, I give him my credit card and I'm saying, I'm here, you order, then I'll order, then you can pay and say thank you. So I'm giving him that middle step of practicing while I'm there. We talk about it beforehand, what he needs to do. He's a little anxious, but he does it. And I know that the more we do it, the better he will get. So same for your child. If they're a little nervous, a little anxious, talk about what they're going to do before they introduce themselves to someone. You want to smile, you want to make eye contact, you want to ask, what's your name? And then see if they would like to play with you. Give them very concrete things to do, like steps, and you'll prepare them to then be able to practice that with confidence. Role play it too. So as kids get older, if they're going to ask out someone to the school dance, or if they're going to call a friend, or if they're going to send a text, you can role play these things with your kid and let them know it's safe for them to practice that with you. And let them know too that the expectation isn't that they're going to get this perfect right away, just as with all things. It's that they try. And what we really want to praise is the effort. And if they do fail, we want to accept that, let them know that's normal. It's a sign of progress, and to help them not be too overwhelmed by it and see what can you learn from this to make you more likely to succeed next time. Okay, I could do a whole webinar just on sleep, so this is just a bullet point here, but start now with enforcing good sleep habits with your child. This means no iPads, no video game consoles, no televisions in their bedrooms. This means a set bedtime within half an hour every night. This means screen time off 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime every night. It's really so important. Sleep deprivation is really impactful to kids. The majority, like 75% of teenagers, do not get enough sleep because we're burning the candle at both ends with them, making them do so many things, expecting so much of them academically, athletically, socially, all of these things. So, helping our kids to understand that sleep is important and helping them understand and notice when they have a day when they don't get so much sleep, how do they feel the next day so that they can start making those connections for themselves and realize that, yeah, I do feel better when I get more sleep. Starting that now is super important. If you have any major sleep issues with your child, you can book a 30-minute free call with me and I can talk it through with you. I know it's still very common for some families to be co-sleeping or have kids sleeping in their beds. That leads to a lot of difficulties with establishing a consistent sleep routine for the child. Again, thinking about our ultimate goal, whether you want this when your child is 12 or 18, I don't think any of us want a child who can't sleep, put themselves to bed by themselves and stay asleep through the night by themselves. That's an important life skill. So it's never too late to teach that to your child, but the longer you've gone with not teaching them, it'll be harder. But that doesn't mean you won't get there. You just have to know what you're doing. I'm going to have a podcast. I'm recording it this week with my friend Jessica Siegel. She's a registered dietitian. So keep your ears out for that in about 5 weeks, probably. It's going to be all about building healthy eating habits. What not to do is don't talk to your kids about macros. Don't talk to them about calories. Don't talk to them about reading labels. Just offer healthful food. That's your job, is to offer healthy options. And their job is to choose what they want. I don't recommend getting into battles about food, especially for girls, knowing that eventually they're going to get exposed to social media algorithms. There's very high risk that your daughters, but boys too, can develop unhealthy eating habits and unhealthy body image issues. So make sure that we just talk about healthy foods, nourishing foods, foods that give us energy, foods that do good things for our body. Eat the rainbow. You want to make sure that you encourage your kids and understand it takes kids on average about 10 times of trying a new food before they're going to really like it. So don't get frustrated with your child if you try to get them to eat broccoli and they're like, I don't like it. They're going to say, I don't like it for 10 times, but just keep offering it. And you say, that's fine. You don't have to take it or you don't have to eat it. Recognize that even just tolerating its presence on their plate is a big step in the direction of being able to eat the food. So try not to do what my parents did. My mom used to get really angry if we didn't eat what she gave us. I remember being probably 11 and she made some pea soup. It was so gross. And I really didn't want to eat this pea soup. And she said, you're eating it. And I had to sit there for 2 hours at the dinner table until it was bedtime. And then when I woke up the next morning, it was there cold out of the fridge for me to eat for breakfast. But I didn't eat it. We just had this battle. So try to avoid those big antlers of two goats driving into each other. We don't want those kinds of big headstrong battles with our kids. We just want to be matter of fact about it and have the certainty that they are going to be healthy eaters at some point in the future. And that even if they eat a very limited diet right now, at some point they're going to get tired of that. And so again, you can just say, well, someday you'll be ready to try this. Someday you might be bored of hot dogs and french fries and you'll want to try some watermelon. It's here when you're ready. So that's again, this could be a whole webinar in and of itself. It's going to be a whole podcast episode, but try to keep in mind that what our bodies get, what our kids' bodies get, is also very important to how they feel and how they behave. And then be playful, keep them moving. This doesn't have to be structured activity. This can be just, dance parties at home, going to the park, going for a walk with the dogs, whatever it is. We just want to make sure that we're keeping their bodies moving. All right. So as I said, one of the pillars that I teach parents is emotional regulation. And in doing that for yourself and getting a better control over your own emotion regulation, you really open the door for your child to grow more in their own emotion regulation because they'll see you having better control of your emotions and they'll know that it's possible. But from our perspective as parents, it's very important that we keep in mind our kids' developmental phase. In childhood, before puberty, their prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that does all of the executive function things like planning, time management, but also emotion regulation, also putting oneself in someone else's shoes, that's all developing. So it is normal for kids to be mean to one another, for kids to hurt one another, for kids to have big emotions that overwhelm them regularly. And even if your child, generally speaking, right, that gets to be less frequent when your kid is 10, 11, 12 than it was when they were 4, 5, 6, but it's still going to happen. And many parents don't understand this. I still remember parents of an 8-year-old girl coming to see me as a child psychiatrist and being really, it was their only child. And they said, she cries like almost every day. And they were really perplexed by this. And I was like, yeah, she's 8. That's still pretty normal. Like the prefrontal cortex is not developed. Anytime your child is overwhelmed, and this was a kid who had some neurodevelopmental differences, so of course she was going to be overwhelmed. When that happens, you're not equipped to self-regulate yet, but that doesn't mean it can't grow. So we need to think of it as a muscle that's constantly growing. Be compassionate with them, help them understand it's okay that you can't do this yet, but you will get better at it the more you practice. And we can't expect that they will be able to regulate their own emotions until they understand what they are. So in my family, we play a game I made up called Feeling Charades. I have a little PDF you can download on my website, and I'll send you guys all the link to it so you can print it out and just cut it out. But it's very simple to do this yourself. You just take a piece of paper and with your kids, have them shout out feelings like happy, sad, mad, proud, sleepy, whatever. Write them down, put them in a bowl or a hat, and then everybody picks one, and you take turns acting out these emotions. It's really fun. My kids at 7 and 12 still enjoy playing this game. My kids in my private practice used to love playing this game. And it's fun because it gets them to think about how to express certain emotions. And you'll see some young kids, you're like, what the hell was that? That was not sad, or that was not frustrated. They do not know how to act out these emotions. They really don't yet know. Like they do know what the emotion is, but to actually express it is really hard for them because their prefrontal cortex isn't yet developed. So it's good practice. It's a workout for their brains. Gratitude is also one of the pillars that I teach. And this is because expressing gratitude on a regular basis strengthens the connections between the upstairs brain, the prefrontal cortex, and the downstairs brain, which is our fear center, the part of our brain that wants to keep us alive, that's always scanning for threats to maintain our survival. When we focus on what we're grateful for, we are noticing intentionally the things that make us safe, the things that make our life better than it could be otherwise. So we see that we're here and not here compared to other people in many ways. And the more that you do that, the more joy you have in your life, the more happiness you have in your life, the more friends you have in your life. So this is a very good skill to practice with kids. If you haven't heard it, a very simple way to do this when you're driving in the car, when you're having family dinners, is to talk with your kids about the rose, the bud, the rose, and the thorn. Yeah. So you ask your child, what's a rose? What's something good? What's something you're grateful for that happened today? What's a bud? What's something that might turn into something good in the future? And what's a thorn? What's something that was a failure today or something frustrating? When you do that, you're really expanding their emotional awareness and practicing gratitude at the same time. Another pillar that I teach parents is embracing failure. And again, we could do a whole webinar on this. There are whole books written on this. We're going to actually get to one later this year in the book club. Basically, the idea is that, again, when we're talking about improving ourselves, whether it's personal development, emotion regulation skills, becoming a better parent for our kids, like becoming better at doing things independently, all of this is a process that inevitably, if we're working at it and we're pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone, is going to sometimes lead to us falling short of what we wanted and therefore feeling like we're failing. So we have to teach our kids through our own stories of our personal life, through stories from other people's personal lives, famous people, through noticing the things that happen to them and remarking on it, not as something bad when they fail, but as a sign that they're pushing themselves outside their comfort zone and therefore growing their abilities. So failure is something that we really want to celebrate and not be upset about. And kids, especially bright kids, tend to be perfectionistic, and perfectionistic kids really beat themselves up when they fail. I see this all the time, again, in these high achieving kids who end up more likely to have depression and anxiety, especially in adolescence when they hit high school and they feel like every grade matters and it's going to determine their future. If they have not yet, by that age, embraced this idea that like failure is a good thing and it's a sign that I'm on the right path and it's a step on my ladder of progress, then they are going to be very fragile. So if you want a child who has resistance to setbacks and the ability to recover quickly from setbacks, we need to teach them self-compassion by teaching them how to embrace failure. All right. I have a lot more slides. We need to wrap this up. All right, so skip this. This is don't just leave the learning to the classroom. Know that you can teach your kids tons of things, and don't expect that your child in this 5 to 12 age range is going to necessarily exhibit a strong draw or connection to one activity, whether that's a physical activity or an intellectual activity or a hobby or something for just fun or music or anything else. There are kids who have that and they're going to stand out, and those kids are awesome. And we want to teach our kids to practice mudita, which is sympathetic joy, like really being happy for someone else that they have found their thing and not being envious or jealous or self critical because we might not have found our thing yet. We want to recognize that what's normal for this phase of development is to be sampling and to not have found your thing yet. And that's totally okay. And we just want to give our kids as many opportunities as possible. And then when we do see a spark in them about something, that we nourish that as much we can without pushing, but just being the wind in their sails for whatever it is that they want to do. Sorry, there's an airplane going over. You may hear that noise. We really want to be talking with our kids a lot. And this is going to be coming up in this month's book club, Thrivers, about character traits and values. I was really happy one day when I asked my son, I was making the quiz that you can find here. It's called theparentdoctor.com/mission statement. When you do this kind of type form quiz, it's going to give you the results that you then can make into your own family mission statement. But I was thinking about values and do my kids know what my values are? So I asked my son what he thought my values were and if I could tell him what I thought his values were. And so we each wrote down our values, then we guessed what the other person was. And I was very happy. We were almost perfectly aligned. Like I knew what his values were and he knew what my values were, which is good. But if you do that exercise with your children, you may find that they perceive values that aren't your intention at all. And that's what this month's book club Thrivers is all about. Often our kids think that our values might be things like getting good grades, working really hard, getting on the team, whatever it is, scoring the goal. Because, and again, it's not necessarily our intention that that's what they take away, but because that's where we give the most energy, comments, feedback, criticism, attention. And we have to be very mindful as parents thinking about how am I spending my money? What am I fighting with my kid about? What am I talking with my kid about? And what are they taking away from that? Because sometimes what we intend is not what we are conveying. And we have to be very mindful of that. And the mission statement exercise is a great one that I've created to help you come up with a foundation that I think is absolutely vital during this time period between 5 and 12 for your kid to understand what does their family stand for. Because as they enter adolescence, they're going to become their own person. They're going to sprout from this soil and foundation that you're laying. But they need to know what are the core character traits that they can share with you so that you have that in alignment. It's going to help you so much in adolescence because there's going to be plenty of things that you aren't aligned with your kid about in adolescence. But when you have those core values, it's really going to help their identity as a good person, whether it's a core value of being playful, having fun, generosity, charity, so many great qualities. But we want to think about them and talk about them as a family so that our kids have really embodied that. If you do this mission statement exercise, you'll get an email from me that'll walk you through how to turn it using Canva and ChatGPT free versions into a nice mission statement. If you come into, I'll talk about it in a bit, the Epic Parent group with me that's going to start November 6th. Sorry, my dog's barking now. I will help my VAs help you make that yourself. Chores are vital. Sorry, I'm going to mute myself and tell the dog to be quiet. All right. Chores are vital. And in the next slide, I think we're going to talk about that. But they give us an opportunity to praise those category 1 behaviors. They give our kids an opportunity to feel like they matter. And one mistake I've seen parents make a lot, especially parents who have high academic achievement outcomes for their kids that they expect the kids to do, is that they will prevent their kids from having too many chores because they want to just let their kid focus on what they think is most important, their academic performance or their athletic performance. The truth is that in life, even those people who are really successful, we have to balance other things too. Someone has to clean your toilet. It might not be you, but you still have to figure out who's going to be the person who's going to clean your toilet. And kids have to learn how to balance their not so fun responsibilities and contributions to the family. And when we do that over and over, what I've seen is that the kids actually like it. They like feeling like they're contributing. And the younger you start, the better. And there's plenty of data also The kids who have chores end up being more successful adults because they're willing to do the hard work that's needed for a good outcome. Okay, so some common chores are here. You guys will get access to all these slides, but from age 5 to 7, the kids can help set the table. They can put the dog food in the dog bowl. They can do compassion activities like sending cards or be pen pals or put love notes in someone's lunchbox. They can help you from 8 to 10 with watering the plants, folding laundry, lots of other things too. By 8 to 10, they can be sweeping, washing the car, dusting. They can help younger siblings, donate toys. And then from age 11 to 12, my son's doing this now. They can help you prepare simple meals. Today's Taco Tuesday. We every Tuesday make tacos, and everybody in the family has a different role. My daughter chops the lettuce, washes it, and sets the table. My son cooks the meat, veggie meat, but still he cooks the meat and warms the tortillas, and we have dinner that way. Volunteering, community cleanups. Again, these are things that aren't just going to happen. Maybe you're already doing some volunteer work in your community. Maybe you're not. But think about it. If that's something that you really value and you want to instill in your kids, how are you going to make it happen? Because you have to do the work and you have to plan for it. And doing that now before age 12 is going to be easier than starting it when they're 14, 15, 16. And they naturally are then in a developmental stage where they don't want to be doing that stuff with you anymore. But if you do it earlier, it's already part of their identity and it's something that you hold together as a value that is shared and you both have the memories of that action. All right. Last month's book club talked about non-optional family activities and optional family activities, NOFAs and OFAs. And I liked that idea a lot. So along with some kind of community service work, that could be a NOFA, that could be a non-optional family activity that everyone has to do. And you can decide what amount feels right for your family. But then there can be optional family activities like maybe going for walks or cooking dinner, playing board games, something like that. But you want to have both and be thinking about both. And you want to embrace downtime and balance. This is something that came up in last month's book club as well. Again, for those of us who are in pockets of families where people are high achieving and expecting a lot from their kids, it's equally important that we teach our kids how to rest and relax. Malcolm Gladwell had a book where he talked about how 10,000 hours makes people really expert at things. It got a lot of press. But what didn't get the equal press, which he wrote about in the book, is that in addition to the 10,000 hours of effort, people who really, really succeed, whether it be at a physical activity like a sport or an academic activity or a business activity, in addition to working really hard, they also plan their rest and guard that equally. So we have to understand and teach our kids to understand. And we're doing a bad job at this, I can tell you, because kids are not getting this message that it's okay to rest. When you work hard, you need to rest to be able to work hard again. And that the two things are directly correlated. The more you rest, the harder you can work. So we want to make sure that we're not overscheduling our kids. This is something that I talk a lot about with the parents in my inner circle. We talk about this in the book club and at office hours. Basically, what the right balance is for you is going to be different for each child. It's going to be different at each stage in your life, but it's absolutely okay. And you should periodically be looking at your activities and deciding, is this too much? Is it not enough? And feel free to, even if it's temporarily, let an activity go and assess how it feels for you and your child in doing so. Do you feel better or do you feel like you really missed that activity? And quality over quantity. Again, the goal at this point between 5 and 12 is not to make your child, well, maybe it is if you have a child like this, but it's very rare. It's not to make your child the next Tiger Woods or Simone Biles, probably. It's about giving them opportunities to experience something that they enjoy and that they get better at with effort and that they can have some social interactions around. Doing one thing like that they really like is better than doing 5. And we also want to teach them how to relax. This is something I've been working with my kids on, just how to take deep belly breaths. A very simple way you can teach this to your kids is the idea of take a deep breath in and count how long it takes you. So maybe you take a deep breath in for 2, and then you exhale through your mouth for double that time, 4 seconds. Simple. You do that 4 or 5 times before bedtime. Ideally, you do this not just when they're stressed or overwhelmed, but at other times to show them how to practice. When you're driving in the car, when you're reading books together, when you're cooking together, whatever it is, like practice calming your body down and teach them how to do that. Breathing does wonders. We talked about this already, embracing failure and how it's key to growth mindset. That was one of the books that we read this year as well. And how we want to teach our kids that challenges are not a sign that you're not good at this. It's just a sign that you're working hard and pushing your limits, which means your brain is growing, your body is growing, your ability is growing, and that's actually a great sign. You want to Yeah, it feels bad when we fail. It does. We don't want to deny that, but we want our kids not to wallow in that bad feeling, to let yourself feel it, then shake it off, recognize that you're doing a good job, take away what you can as a learning point, and then keep going. Because again, the self-compassionate of us do better at shaking it off and continuing on the path. So ultimately, building self-compassion and helping our kids to have self-compassion by recognizing that failure does not mean you're a failure. It's just a sign that you're on a path that maybe isn't the right path, or maybe it is, but you just have to do it a different way. When we build that skill, we really give our kids a huge key skill to being successful in whatever they do in life in the future. So, as I've mentioned, what I teach as the parent doctor is based on 4 pillars. The first is defining direction as a parent, being the CEO of your family, really embracing that. And that's most helpful for your kids if you can do that now when they're between ages 5 and 12. This is the most fertile time to be doing that and to be doing that work. And again, it's not just going to happen. Just like you're not going to get in shape by thinking about it. You have to actually do some things to define this direction clearly so that your kids know what your values are, what your family stands for. You have a family mission statement, and you know where you're going. Second is emotion regulation. Really, if we work at it, every adult can be nearly 100% able to control their emotions in every situation. And the great thing about this work with parents is you're not just going to see this benefiting you in your relationship with your kids. As your emotion regulation gets better, your mental health yourself gets better, your relationship with your partner gets better, your relationship with any coworkers gets better, and your self-confidence improves. It's like a win-win-win. Embracing failure, we've talked about that now a lot, but that's absolutely key, both for ourselves as parents when we're on that downward part of the earthquake, or sorry, not the earthquake, the roller coaster, and we're feeling like, oh, I suck. I totally screwed up today with my kid. That's normal. And having self-compassion for yourself in that moment is going to help you be able to make the repair, make the apology to your child if you need to, and recover and do better next time. And then finally, practicing gratitude. I can't tell you the best way that that's going to work for your family, but we do talk about a lot of ways that other people have done this successfully. We learn from each other how we're doing that. And if you're feeling inspired, I encourage you to take some action now to continue your momentum. The Epic Parents, the next group is going to be starting November 6th. That's next Wednesday. And if you join, I promise the relationship with your child is going to reap rewards for years to come. What you get in this is weekly live Zoom calls with me. You get a private WhatsApp group where I'm there every day guiding you, and it's a really lovely community. I keep these groups to no more than 6 families. So if you join, both you and your co-parent will have access to these Zoom calls and the WhatsApp group, and to me that way. You'll have a one-on-one call with me at the beginning and at the end of our session. This would start November 6th, and it'll go through the end of the year, taking a break for Thanksgiving week and Christmas week. You get access to 8 weeks of pre-recorded course content that I have created, but I also understand in my experience so far, since we've come out of the pandemic and everybody's back to full speed, full life, it's hard now for me too to sit down and watch asynchronous learning materials because somehow it just doesn't have the same gravitas to get in my calendar as a live Zoom meeting has. And you get ongoing access to the office hours calls for the next 6 months. So these are calls like this webinar, but more interactive, where the participants bring up a topic and I talk about it with my child psychiatrist experience. I bring data, we discuss all of that. And so these are very helpful calls too, where you can ask questions, pick my brain live each month. And as I mentioned, I have that family mission statement generator. If you joined the Epic Parent group, we're going to make you a really lovely picture of your family with your mission statement that you can print out and post. If you would like to get on the waitlist, go to theparentdoctor.com/waitlist. And if you get a friend to join you, that would be awesome, both because you'll have a buddy and you'll have an accountability partner. And research shows from psychology, if you read Atomic Habits, you know this too. People who have an accountability partner or are participating in a change with a community are 8 times as likely to see the results they want as people who try to do it alone. So bring a friend. You're going to increase your odds of improving yourself, improving your relationship with your kids, improving their futures by having a buddy with you, and you're both going to get $500 off. All right, so that's it for the presentation today.